when you go into a dialysis center and you decide that you want a kidney transplant, your attitude does matter. Now, I'm not talking about, you know, the toxic positivity that everybody keeps telling you that you need to participate in. I'm talking about if you have just a bad attitude in general about this and, how you feel about this, they're always watching you. The doctors, the nurses, the techs, the transplant coordinator, they're all watching you. And if you don't have the right mindset for them, they can deny you for that. It's not a well, I'm qualified, so they're going to give it to me. That's not how this works. If the transplant center calls your dialysis center and talks to your doctor, and that doctor, whoever it is, if your doctor tells them that this guy's got a bad attitude, he does not have the right attitude that we are looking for transplant, then you're not going to get one, regardless of how good your labs are. They're going to demand, or at the very least, give a strong suggestion that you change your attitude, change your latitude. So if that's the case, like, what suggestion could I make to you as to how to get around this? Always have a mindset of, I want this transplant. And then be resolute about, when I get this transplant, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this transplant. Then compartmentalize dialysis as a job and sort of divorce yourself emotionally, if in public appearance alone. Because you don't want to give a doctor at a dialysis center, a nephrologist, a nurse, a tech, or whatever, anybody that's actively watching you, you don't want to give them any reason to dissuade a transplant center from giving you a transplant. This will be the only instance where I will ever suggest that a patient should lie about their situation. If a doctor asks you how you're doing, do not go or fly into some diatribe about how miserable you are. That was the mistake that I made with UC Davis. And they end up taking me off the transplant list because of that. So, my suggestion, maybe bend the truth a little bit. Maybe don't go into such graphic detail as to how this has affected you emotionally. They ask you, hey, Carl, how you doing today? I'm doing great. I have my ups and downs, and just leave it at that. I think that is an appropriate response, because most of these people in these dialysis centers, these techs, these doctors, these nurses, these transplant coordinators, they don't really care how you feel anyway. So you kind of just got to tell them what they want to hear so that way you can move forward in the process. I hated dialysis all the way up until the time I got the transplant. But they didn't necessarily know that, right? I would express some sadness about being on dialysis, but I never went into too much detail. I left that very vague. And with CPMC in San Francisco, I left that very vague, and that was very much an intentional decision on my part. So that way, I wouldn't do anything to make them think, oh no, this guy's got a bad attitude. Maybe we should rethink giving him a transplant. Maybe we need to just, punish him a little bit more for his transgressions of not loving this. So we're just going to leave him to cook a little bit more until we get the right response that we want from this guy, so that way we can clear him. Don't just take it for granted that you can just go in there, be miserable, treat the staff like garbage, and then still get what you want at the end of the day. That's not how it works. I wouldn't recommend doing that anyway. You should always be a decent person to the people that are at the very least decent to you, and treat people how you want to be treated. But you should always go into dialysis, especially if you are looking for a transplant, with a more analytical, strategic mind about it, because they don't like honesty. Nurses, techs, doctors, they don't want you to be honest. They just want you to shut up and do your effing treatment. A lot of times, they are indifferent to your suffering. And at worst, they simply just don't care. Remember, these people aren't your friends. They're just there to do a job. They're just there to get paid. And if you are eligible, you are there to get a transplant. So don't give them a reason to change their minds.